live. So, welcome, my dear beautiful beings. This is another beautiful episode of Zero Point Healing Show. This is 129th episode of the Zero Point Healing Show, and today we are going to talk about demystifying depression with the human givens approach. This is a completely new modality, if that's what this is called. So I'm really looking forward to today's conversation, and I have with me Andrew, who is who is a practitioner of human givens approach. So I'm really looking forward to learn so much from this particular show myself. So before I move on to my wonderful guest here, just a short intro about me. So I'm Vishnu Priya, and I am certified in multiple different holistic healing modalities. And through my journey, I had been discovering so many new stuff. So that kind of my journey through these different modalities also inspired me to create this kind of a platform, that which I call zeropointhealing.com. So it is a web directory with all different kind of modalities. Now I guess there is at least 60 to 65 different holistic healing modalities registered in the directory, along with so many different practitioners, therapists, healers, facilitators from all around the world. So that's what Zero Point Healing is all about. And in this particular show, I kind of people, invite the practitioners who are registered in the directory to kind of come in and kind of have a conversation with us and teach us what it is that they offer. So that's what this is all about. If you are a holistic healing practitioner yourself, I welcome you to zeropointhealing.com. You can register for free. And you can also, if you're interested in this kind of an interview with me, you can contact me for that too. Alrighty, so I'm now moving on to my guest here. So welcome, Andrew. Thank you so much for coming to my show. So tell us a little
It's a
bit about
pleasure.
yourself.
Well, I'm quite an old man now, and I've spent at least half of my life in the city of London as a businessman and an economist. And it's only in the 20 years ago that I began to was introduced to the human givens therapy. That was by accident, but I found I was introduced to it and I was quite beguiled by it. So I went to one or two lectures on it and I found myself sucked in, really. And I thought to myself, well, this is something I can do. This will be a big change for me and I'm ready for it. And so I trained in human givens. This is a UK therapy. I didn't realize at the time, we're going back to around the year 2000, that this was near the beginning of human givens. So I didn't realize then that I was one of the beginners, because there were a lot of people on the lectures, but I did, and I took it very keenly, and then I trained and then I qualified. They have a qualification and an exam. And then I've been practicing as a human givens therapist really for the last 15 years, I would say. And I'm doing online work, face-to-face work, but increasingly online. I think that suits me more and more now. And basically we help with the everyday mental and emotional problems that affect people. Depressions, anxieties of all kinds, and addictive behaviors. And we can deal with these much more quickly and much more effectively than seem to be the normal way. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. So what is humans given approach then? So also tell us maybe by
Well,
giving some examples so we can understand.
the human givens starts with what they call an organizing idea. So this is the basic understanding of what it is to be human and why and what it is that makes people mentally and emotionally healthy. It is that creates mental and emotional distress. And so you have to start with the human givens, and the human givens are you've got to see human beings like living creatures, like a plant. What does a plant need in order to survive? It needs water, it needs nutritious earth, and it needs good sunshine. And if it has these needs, these plant needs, similarly, human beings have needs. We don't just have physical needs for food and shelter, we have emotional needs too, or to be safe, or connections in society, for a sense of meaning and purpose. These are essential needs for human beings. They're not optional extras. We need this. And if we're leaving a life where we're not getting this for whatever reason, called the failure of our guidance system. So if you're forced telling you you're hungry, you have a mental guidance system too. And if it's not working properly because you're not getting your needs met, then you risk suffering mental distress. And most mental distress, depression, anxiety, are the consequence of a life that isn't working and that you can't put right. Does that make sense?
Yes, Andrew,
Yeah.
looks like, but your video and audio is getting a little uh, off here and there. So the continuity was missing because of that. Is there anything that can be done from your end?
Okay.
I wonder if there's a
I
better
don't
option.
think so, no.
Okay.
I don't know what to do. I think it's working okay at this end. I can see you perfectly well.
Yeah, now I hear all of that. So yes, I guess it was just a little portions of the prior statements that went off. But I could capture what you're about to say. So so tell us, like, how is it now? How do you use it in a session? So how do clients come up? And of course, we need to talk about this topic of depression. But if at all you can give us any kind of examples about the human givens approach, that will be amazing. If you want to share with us, okay, what happens during a session? If a client comes to you, how does that happen, like the session?
Well, clients find me from directories, from my personal experience, I get referrals, I get people, refer their friends to me. So I get clients from all over the place. Incidentally, just to give you one example, we have a system, we have an organization in this country called PTSD Resolution, which basically helps soldiers, military people who have been traumatized in war. And we have hypnotic techniques that can remove trauma, which is a very important gift we have. And I was just seeing a soldier just before I came on, who is traumatized by an airplane accident he was in. And that trauma is basically destroying his life, and he's become heavily addicted as a result of this. So I'm helping him by de-traumatizing the original incident of the aeroplane accident. And now that that's done, I will now be helping him using his resources, building his confidence, so he can then get his life in order again. And as he gets his life in order, he will drink less. So people not become addicted. You don't immediately work on the addiction. You work on getting their life better for them. Then when they're getting their needs met, he's doing something, the addiction will tend to fade away. That again is a kind of different way of looking at it, really. So we don't see addiction as an illness. We see even the provoking that unravels out of control.
Beautiful. So now let's talk.
Anyway, shall I talk about depression?
Yes, yes, that's where exactly I was coming into. So let's start the topic of depression. What is depression from your point of view, and how can that be addressed?
What Well, to understand depression, you have to understand why you dream, right? Everybody dreams. Every night, everybody dreams. In fact, mammals dream. It's a vital function. It must be a vital function, otherwise we wouldn't need to dream. Because when you dream, you're totally helpless, aren't you? You're completely immobile, your eyes are closed, you're completely lost, you're completely vulnerable to attack. Yet every night, every human being dreams, whether they remember the dreams or not. So dreaming is unbelievably important. And what you're doing when you're dreaming is you're clearing your head of all the emotional disturbance of the previous day. That's what you're doing when you're dreaming. So, for example, if you're angry for some reason, there's nothing wrong with being angry, but if you are angry, say, and you deal with the anger by shouting and screaming or doing whatever you need to do, that night you will not have an anger completing dream, because the anger emotion would have led to an action and it would have been cleared. But if that night you have not cleared the anger by action, you will have an anger completing dream. You will play out metaphorically some metaphor of the anger situation, where the person you're angry with will be represented by somebody else, perhaps your cousin or your neighbor or something. It'll be metaphorical, but you will play out that anger experience so that the next day your template is healthy for you to be angry again, if you need to be. Because anger is a natural human reaction, just like anxiety, just like worry, just like joy. And they're there for a purpose for us to use to get our needs met. So that now, dreaming is exhausting. It takes a lot of energy. So if you have to dream a lot, because you will wake up exhausted. You'll be tired when you wake up. You will not be able to be refreshed by your dreaming. And you'll get tired. And if you're tired when you wake up because you're worrying, you've been worrying too much, then the problems that were there the day before will be even more severe. And then you will slip into a depression. A depression is a state of mental and emotional exhaustion, where you can't use your mind to sort out your problems. And all you do instead is worry about them. And then as you worry about them, you get more tired, you can't sleep properly, your concentration levels fall. So all the symptoms, and that's what a depression is. A depression is a state of mental and emotional exhaustion where you're unable to deal with the problems that properly started in the first place. And all you can do is worry about them and get lost. That's what a depression is. Now, that's quite an interesting insight. You won't have heard of that before. And if you go into Google and say, what is depression, right? When I finished, and everybody listening to this, go to Google and put in what is depression. And what you will get is a number of big websites, all of which will give you a list of depression symptoms. I've got a list here: low mood, tense, fewer social activities, sleep disturbances, thinking about failure, loss of interest in pleasure, all these symptoms, but they don't tell you what a depression is. But if you're exhausted and you can't deal with the problems that you face, then all of these so-called symptoms are understandable. So that's what a depression is. It's the exhaustion caused by dreaming too much, and instead of dealing with your problems, you're just worrying about them. So that's depression. So the next question, well, how do you deal with it?
Absolutely, yes. So now that we know what depression truly is, how do we deal with it, and how maybe Human Givens approach can
Well,
help
how do
us?
I deal with it?
Yes.
Well, the first thing I do for most people who are depressed, I spend a lot of time and effort explaining to you what a depression is. And I give people audios to listen to, and I will do some hypnotherapy, and I will explain what I've explained to you. And normally that leads to light bulb moments. People think, ah, that's what a depression is. And I tell people that a depression is just like a twisted ankle. It's no big deal. And if you twist your ankle, what you've got to do is rest your ankle and wait for it to recover. But what you don't do if you've got a twisted ankle is go running and walking on it, because that will make it worse. So if you're worrying unproductively, the last thing you do is worry. Now, so then the second step is all kinds of exercises and distraction activities to stop people worrying so that their depression mood lifts. But often, just to explain what a depression is the light bulb moment. Because often, if depressed people, they think they're going mad. They think there's something wrong with them. They're lost in black and white thinking. You know, it's something wrong with me. Nobody loves me. I'm too fat. I'm too stupid. Right? People are looking for explanations of why they can't sort out their problems. And these explanations just make them worry more and make them rest. If they suddenly realize that it's just a REM sleep disorder because they're dreaming too much, it's liberating. Can you see that? And their mood begins to lift. And then if their mood begins to lift, and if you're worrying less, you can feel better in a few days. It's not weeks or months. Then they're beginning to buy into what I'm saying to them. So that's the first thing. The other thing I say to people, and I think this is quite important, is that for the time being, until they're feeling better, they mustn't deal with their problems, because their mind is not ready for it. So what I do, I give people the ability or the excuse, if you like, to postpone dealing with their problems. This is why I would never talk about people's. I would never say to somebody who came to see me clearly depressed, because I give people a little form to fill in, so I know they're depressed. I would never say to anybody who is depressed, "Tell me, how do you feel?" That's the worst thing you should say to somebody, because they feel terrible. And if you say to them, well, why do you feel terrible? Then they'll come up with all kinds of reasons why they're feeling terrible. All the things they've been worrying about, their job isn't going good, their feelings, their marriage isn't working for them. They're worried about their daughter. She's not doing very well at school. They're feeling bad because they're not seeing their neighbor. Blah, blah. They'll come up with 100 reasons why they're not, or they're worrying about their childhood because there was a trauma there which they need to get. So the last thing you do with somebody who's depressed is say to them, how do you feel? The last thing a depressed person needs to do is talk about their depression. You've got to get their mind better. You've got to get them sleeping better, dreaming less, distracting themselves. And then as they begin to feel better, then you can ask them, well, so what are your problems? Let's deal with your problems now. But often what you find is by that time, they can deal with their problems themselves because their mind is better. Anyway, that's how it works. And often, and I would say the majority of people who are depressed can find their depression significantly lifted within 3 or 4 sessions of therapy. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. And would there be any kind of case studies or maybe specific examples of someone that you want to kind of share, telling us how the sessions were and how maybe a person recovered from depression using Human Givens approach?
Well, you mean talk about some of my clients?
Right. If you want to give us
Well,
some.
I saw a young, well, not a, I saw a well, I saw a young woman. Well, she wasn't that young. She was young. She was young if you're as old as me. She was a mum with two young children, and she was really lost in a serious depression. And she was having to keep her family going. She was having to do a job, and she was just getting more and more exhausted. And when I explained to her what was going on, she immediately understood this. And about 3 or 4 years previously, her mother had died, and that had been a big shock to her. And as she looked back, she felt she hadn't really recovered from the loss of her mother. And when I let her talk a little bit about the loss of her mother, it was clear to me that the loss of her mother was basically a traumatic experience for her, without getting very, very agitated and very, very upset. So she was traumatized by that. She was still traumatized by the memory of the loss of her mother, which is understandable. So I used hypnotherapy to clear away the trauma. And then she listened to my audios about the importance of worrying less and distracting yourself. And within a few weeks, she was better. I'll talk about one other person who was depressed. And I think this is quite an interesting case. This was a man in his 40s who came to see me, really depressed. And he had a family, and I think he was happily married, and he had a couple of children, and he worked in the building industry. And as he talked about it, he was clearly traumatized by a terrible depression he'd had. Whenever he thought about that first depression, you could see the trauma building up. Now that man, he'd had a very interesting early adulthood. He'd got seriously into criminality and drugs and all kinds of things. And I think he might have even ended up in jail once. But he was desperate to leave that life. And I think his depression was basically because of his unworkable life with a lot of criminality, a lot of drugs, and a lot of violence. And I think that was his depression. And I think he was still basically traumatized by his early life. And that, if you like, was what needed to be cured and healed from him. That, if you like, was his resources that weren't working. So I think a lot of the clients I see, they have memories that aren't helping them. So this guy had a memory around his first depression. This young mother had a depression around the loss, around the trauma, around the loss of her mother. And I think that's often a big part of lifting it. But you have to be positive. You have to get people away from thinking that they need to worry about their problems. Because useless rumination is what Christ brings. Let me say one other thing on this, because I'm not denying, the big issues that are important for human existence. Why are we here? What about spirit? What about larger values, or about the life we lead? You look at modern society, it's materialism, it's loss of there's plenty in modern society that you can look at and say is bad. There's plenty in modern society you can look at and say, well, it's no wonder we have a depression epidemic. This depends on where you come from. But what I'm saying is that this primarily is not the cause of depression. And we can only deal with these problems once we feel better in ourselves. Yeah? Or if you look at society as a whole, you should say to yourself, well, to what extent is society not delivering the human needs that people have? So we all have a need to be in control, to be responsible. So if people don't have work, or if people are told that they can have everything they want or something, right? How can you expect them to feel satisfied in themselves? This partly depends on your politics, I suppose, but it's partly getting back to the fundamentals of what it is to be human. What is it that drives? Well, we have to get our needs met. We have to feel safe and secure. We have to have a sense of belonging. We have to have a sense of community. We have to have a sense that what we do has value and gives value. These are our human needs. And if too many people are living a life where they're not getting this, then we'll have an epidemic in depression. There we are. So I'm doing a lot of talking, aren't I?
No, it was such a beautiful conversation, and the way you explain it is like I'm resonating with everything that you're talking about. So for those of them who would love to kind of book a session with you and kind of maybe have a talk to you, so what kind of services is it like? Can they just maybe send you a message and kind of talk to you about their issues? So those of them who are watching this session, if they want to kind of get a session booked with you, how can they approach you?
Well, I have a website, of course. I think the link will be given you'll see you have a link.
Yes.
And you can contact me through that. I have a questionnaire you can fill in, a depression test questionnaire, but you don't have to fill in that. I also offer a free consultation of maybe half an hour where we can talk and where I can evaluate and see if I can help people. But then I will do work online, almost invariably online. And I have an audio program of depression, a depression audio program that I ask my clients to listen to. And a lot of the first of those audios is basically going through a lot of what I've done today so that people feel better, so they feel liberated, and then they can begin to move. I help people remove some of their patterns that aren't working for them. But it's kind of practical. It's down to earth.
Yes.
It's not given to high-flown discussions about the nature of existence. Or I will do that if clients want to, but they've got to be feeling a lot better before I will. It's also interesting, if I look at the clients I don't help, and obviously I don't help everybody, and nobody helps everybody, invariably, these are people who are really lost and cannot get a life that works for them. That either because of their situation, their financial situation, their family situation, or it could be kind of rigidities in the way they view what they need. I saw a man who wanted to be a photographer, a proper photographer, a kind of creative photographer, not a photographer taking wedding pictures, you know. And he tried very hard, and he was in his late 40s, and he just couldn't do it. He for some reason, or because accidents, or because of bad luck, he could not get what he wanted, which he'd had as a vision ever since he was a little boy, to be a photographer. And I couldn't shift him away from that. He wanted to be a photographer, and he didn't know how, and he lost all confidence. So he was a lost soul. and so he couldn't get his needs met for a satisfying life. And I think he had been married, and his wife had left him because she couldn't bear it any longer. So often, yeah. So once people are feeling better, then you can help them get their needs met. That's the way we do it.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrew, and those of you watching our beautiful conversation here. So, if you're interested to book a session with Andrew, you can click the link right below or above this video, and then you can go to his website. And as he said, there's a beautiful questionnaire in there. You can have a free consultation with him and see how he can help you with your situation. So that's the end of this beautiful interview. As a special bonus for you, we also have a 10% off discount coupon. So while contacting Andrew, just let him know that you found him through 0 Point, and he'll give you that 10% off as well. So thank you so much, Andrew, for this beautiful, beautiful interview. It was like, wow, this is possible.
It's a pleasure. It's very nice meeting you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
All right, my dear, beautiful viewers, I'm gonna see you in my next show. Those of you watching this on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel, and you can also share this with, specifically if you know of anybody dealing with depression. I guess this video is going to be a huge contribution to them. So please do share, and let's spread this awareness. Thank you so much for all your support. I'm going to see you next time. Bye bye. Bye, Andrew.